I can say I'm the only Chinese-speaking person on the team to explain the general situation of basically being on every single film set, communicating with every single subject and filming crew. Those are based in China, but Liz and the other, we have two producers basically, me and Emma. Emma and Liz are based in LA. But my role basically involves a little bit of everything, making the filming happen. So Emma, the other producer, is more responsible for fundraising, which, as you can imagine, a film crossing the time frame of 4 years is going to cost a lot, and the travel expenses and everything involved, the gears. We used Alexa Mini, which is typically a cinema camera rather than a Sony, which is way smaller. So per the question of how obvious is the camera, which is probably going to come out, it's a gigantic camera that's not going to be one of those like really easily neglected camera in the room, which is why the filming part is extremely challenging.
So the opening credits, you mentioned that everybody got, they approved it twice, in the very beginning and at the end.
Yes.
And that probably is related to the fact that not everybody's understanding of the film was the same in the beginning. Yes. as the end. So can you just walk us through, so at least for the main characters, the husband, the wife, and the mistress, and maybe even Mistress Dispeller, what were each of their impressions of what this project was in the very beginning, and how did that change?
Right, so as a common documentarian practice, really from before day one of filming them, we already need to get them sign the release form, which basically allow us to own their rights of portraits in any regard, in any of the filming that comes after. But basically, due to the sensitive nature of this film and our filmmaker ethics, that we did not want to exploit any of the subjects, and also being able to confidently answer the Q&A of nobody is exploited in the film, we gave them a second chance to reconsent after every filming is done, and also we had the final cut. We basically sat down with every single one of them and watched the whole final cut to let them know what they really signed up for, because there was no way, we didn't know how it was going to turn out. So basically they were given a second chance to watch it, and at that moment, if one of them had said, we don't want to participate anymore, we would totally respect it. It's a huge loss for us, but we were ready to accept that as well.
So what did they think they were originally signing up for?
Right, so apparently, obviously Wang and the wife know exactly what's going on, because the nature of their relationship is the wife hired Miss Wang to dispel the mistress and save her marriage. Oh, just a side note, the cousin, I'll get back to that question. The cousin who showed up to the session with Wang and the wife, so the reason this whole case happened is because the cousin is a male mistress that we filmed 2 years ago. So the cousin was a male mistress that Wang successfully dispelled, hired by a really rich woman in China. And so when his sister came to him and saying, oh, I have this huge problem in my family, he's like, I know just the right person and solution for you. And since we already filmed with him and it was great filming, peaceful, respectful, he trusted us. And then that's how initially that trust level for this specific case started. But okay, back to the question. The husband really agreed to filming under the pressure of the wife, because as you can see, some of the lines that he said, he was never gonna leave the family or divorce the wife, as is what the mentality of most of the cheating men are in China, based on the social, Asian or Chinese culture value, as you might know. It's just like very, very rare for a cheating man to leave the family and go with a mistress, even if they felt the same as the husband, spending time with the mistress was being like in the sun, but that wasn't enough for them to leave the family. So for the husband, it was really under the pressure of the wife. And for the mistress, it's really, when Wang got involved, as you can see, she really taught the husband how to distance from the mistress, and the mistress had no other way. And also, but at a later sit-down interview with the mistress, we as filmmakers also were really curious about what really incentivized her to participate. So she told us basically, she thought, because initially we told the husband and mistress that this is going to be a documentary about modern love and relationship in China, like more in a general sense, due to the inherent deception nature of Wang's work. We couldn't just go on to the husband and mistress saying, oh, we're dispelling the mistress. Mm-hmm. But so basically the mistress thought that it's going to be a depiction of her love story, and she had such confidence that she was going to win the husband over. the wife at the beginning. But as later on, I mean, Wang came out to with her identity to all of them, but they all decided, as most of Wang's clientele decided to forgive her because they didn't see Wang doing anything really to harm them. If anything, Wang really went out her way to help the mistresses. And not in this case particularly, but sometimes she would help the mistresses find really good and suitable boyfriends, and they're like really happy afterwards. It wasn't just getting rid of one person, but also solving the fundamental problem in the marriage and everything.
Wang is such a fascinating and like watchable character.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure many of you are thinking about that climactic scene at the end when they all meet together, and Wang is basically, what it feels like to me, she's directing the scene.
Yes.
Right, like we have a director to the film,
Yes.
but she's telling the director what to do, or sort of like what is this scene going to be, and how kind of almost like how we're going to set it up. So I'm actually curious, how involved was she even with how the camera was set up, how many cameras, who's in the room? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Right. Wang's definitely a master of manipulation. I mean, to be really successful at her work, she needed to really understand the psychology of each and every subject, which just makes her great at what she does. But at one point, we were so impressed by her skills of manipulation. At one point, we thought, are we being manipulated as filmmakers? That's what we thought, because we thought we hit the jackpot of filmmakers, because, you know, everybody got involved, and they also agreed to a way deeper level of access to their personal lives as to what they do and their other personal relationships. But the camera setting, most of the times there was only one camera. Liz is actually the major cinematographer for most of the films. But as you can see, some of the scenes has multiple angles. So the most amount of people that we had in the room would be 5, including me, Liz, second camera, sound recorders, and PA. Yeah, and most of the spaces are so limited, like the kitchen and spaces that you're just not gonna have a lot of space for people to be there. And also a lot of times we'll set up the camera and leave the room, make sure the battery's charged, get rolling, and leave the room to avoid any potential eye contact or a distraction of any sort, so that they can really be themselves. Yeah.
Wow. Any questions from the audience? Oh, I think keep going.
I'll start me.
Oh, sure.
Where was the movie filmed?
In Luoyang, Henan province.
Where's that located?
It's the central part of China. Luoyang actually used to be the capital of the Middle Kingdom for 13 dynasties. So it's actually a really old city.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you found multiple Mistress Dispellers throughout China. Were they
Yes.
all around China, or mostly in this area?
It's all over China. That was really at the beginning stage of the film. Me and Liz, we were meeting with multiple different Mistress Dispellers throughout China, and private detectives too, who are sort of fulfilling the same role but with a different intention. That's more like to get more money out of the divorce court. But out of all the castings that we've done, Miss Wang just turned out to be this most charismatic in terms of personality, and also empathetic in her approach to so caring and helping each of one of her clients, which aligns really with our team, because one of the central goals that we wanted to reach is we did not want to malign anybody in the case, especially the mistresses, because, you know, usually that's who takes the most amount of blame, who's already from kind of a really underprivileged social group in the society, like uneducated, usually from rural areas, and really young and has zero or limited social resources to climb the social ladder. So what we didn't want to do really aligned with Wang's approach.
So, what is Wang's story? Like, how did she become the Dispeller? And I take it as a profession.
Yeah, so she was never professionally trained in psychology or any of those. And she actually, 10 years ago, she's been doing this for 10 years. And 10 years ago, she really left a failed marriage of herself. And then something miraculous, something clicked for her that she really decided that this is what she was gonna do. And I guess the track record just start to build up. Allegedly, she has a lot of presence on social media in China, and allegedly she dispels 800 mistresses a year. She literally, for 4 years of filming with her, she is the busiest person I've ever met. She basically travels 300 days out of a year, sleeps 3-4 hours a day, constantly on the call with all of her clients, and remembers every single detail from every single subject of each case. It's crazy, and she charges a ton as well. So she starts charging the second she leaves the office, and when she's on the train for 4 hours, clock ticking, sleeps for 8 hours, clock ticking. So it's a profitable job.
This the husband, when they're doing the first filming of him with her in the kitchen, she sends the wife away, or tells her, "You gotta go away. I gotta talk to her privately." He still thinks she's a teacher, and then she's just having a casual conversation about his wife, and he's talking about his mistress within 30 seconds.
That's why also there were definitely scenes, including that one when we thought, like I said, we thought we were being also cheated on by Wang's arrangement. At one point we thought, really, did Wang really just hire an actress to act out the mistress? And we had all of those doubts. But it was moments of, as we really look at the footages and see the micro expressions of the husbands, and he was hiding his face from the camera or had a really surprised look toward the camera. We just thought they can't be actors that are that good and not known in China who are just taking on this project. But I'm sorry, can you ask the question?
No, I was just going to say, she pulled this information out pretty quickly. I'd say, for somebody who charges that much money per hour, she's earning her money.
Right. And each of her cases really unfolds in different ways. Some cases take up to 2-3 years, so that's a really abundant salary right there. But this case took about 4 months in total to unfold and gets resolved and everything. So each one really is different. And yeah.
I have a question about the time element. From the time that the husband sits down with Wang in this intimate conversation in the kitchen, how long does it take the husband to actually decide that he's going to give up the mistress? Because in the conversation, he was clearly torn, because he said he had feelings for her and he wanted to continue the relationship. So how or when did he make that turn?
He really never did. If you can recall his self-narration bit by bit throughout the whole film, he constantly said, "Well, I don't know. I felt like my feelings for her haven't really changed." Even the confrontation between him and the mistress, he's more like, "Oh, why don't you just wait for 2 more months?" Even though Wang explicitly told him to just be very distant and indifferent and cold. So he really never made up his mind. But I think Wang's purpose in this particular case, it was really not to change the mind of him, but also change the mind of the mistress, so that she would disappear from the family scene. But also one would focus on fixing the problem between the husband and the wife, so that no more, because in Chinese, mistress is a little third, so that no little fourth or little fifth would appear in the family. Yeah.
Let's go here.
So regarding the consent that you got at the beginning of the project and at the end of the project, which of the two was more difficult to get, and was there any point where the project was in jeopardy due to someone withholding consent?
Oh, every day. That's my dread every day, waking up as the producer. So in the middle of the project, actually for a whole 3 months, we almost just didn't have a project, because Wang got really, really anxious and angry for some reason. And we had no other way but just to let her anxiety sit. So we didn't really have a project. She said, I don't want to participate anymore, and don't use any of the footage shot before, which is 2 years into the project already. And so basically at that time, which I totally understand, because there's so much at stake for her. Well, all of the film subjects agreed to be filmed under one condition, that this film would not be released in China. That's a precondition. And so I totally understood, because if this film gets really successful, Oscars, hopefully, and gets back to China, it's possible that she can no longer do what she does if the government doesn't like it. So I totally understood her. So I let her anxiety sit, and I was basically turning myself into a little Mistress Dispeller, casting through various channels, asking my relatives, like social media and everything, and going to different cities, befriending mistresses and desperate wives myself. But it turned out Wang's successful at what she does for a good reason, and nobody's really able to get that level of trust. And hopefully, I think in the end, she realizes me and Liz, we really treated her as a friend rather than trying to, as filmmakers, trying to get something juicy out of her and then bounce. So she really was convinced later to come back on board and helped us found this case. And at the ending stage of the project, if they had said, we always had a plan B, an alternative of sort of changing the artistic direction of this film to maybe less about infidelity, but through Wang's perspective, and also all of the vignettes that you're seeing in the documentary, we were gonna try to change it to a documentary about the love industry in China in general. Like the pan shot of all the Chinese men in front of the snow mountain. Probably you wondered what is that? So that's basically a dating camp and hundreds of Chinese men being taught by a dating master. I'm still in that WeChat group, and they're discussing every single day on how to flirt with a girl, how to do street pickups, what's the implication behind a girl's message that goes like this. There's daily discussions going on like that, and there are master classes and everything, which we thought we would probably develop later into a short itself. That would be too distracting in this, but there would be a totally different film if they had dropped out. Yeah.
Scotty.
So I have a follow-up question to the consent. If, after distribution, and I know this is not meant to be released in China, but let's say some months and some years have passed, is there an opportunity for the subjects to say, hey, I don't want this film to be out there anymore? Like, what does post-release, consent look like?
The direct answer is no, and usually that no comes already like the first time. Usually there's only one time of signing the release form, because otherwise there's just so much at jeopardy for the filmmaker's investment, time, money, and everything. So usually if the subject's already signed the release form, then they don't get to back out. Because each film is so different. We specifically didn't want any exploitation to happen because we know in the industry previously, there would be subjects suing filmmakers for that specific reason, because they can just come out and say, if it's the truth or not, but they can always come out and find a lawyer and say, we were exploited, we were lied to, that's why we signed the release form. But in the end, nobody would really know, which is why we were really, really careful about that.
I was just wondering, in China, is there like a Western style marriage counseling industry? Or is this the way you solve this problem?
Bingo.
This is not a widely known industry even within China, because her clientele or the people who know her would only be the people who seek out for that service or in that situation.
She's wondering if there's a psychologist.
Right. And in the marriage counseling or therapy in general, it just isn't that widely applied in China. There's a certain level of stigmatization in this, and not a lot of people, it's not a common practice basically for either individuals or married people.
Did you get I got a sense at the end of the movie that it kind of related to this question, that the issues that were underlying what caused the infidelity, they kind of seemed not resolved because they were never actually really talked about. Did you get the sense? This is kind of a subjective, and I know you're a documentarian, but
Right.
you kind of walked away from it thinking 3 months from now, they're going to be facing the same issues, or 3 weeks from now, and it kind of seemed like they couldn't really talk to each other. That was the takeaway scene for me at the end. It was they couldn't even hold a conversation when they're at the park, so things might be rocky going forward. I'm kind of curious what the takeaway is.
So Wang's presence never really disappears. She appears whenever any of her clients needs her, and we have people who would ask to hang out with her, which she will charge. Clients from 5 years ago, and she recently has a new problem. But she would really, because like you said, we're documentarians, and we can't really be there 24/7 for every critical moment that was solving the problem, or that were, the conversations going on, or that were really going on in the family, or the throwing a cup of tea and kung fu part probably would have happened if the camera wasn't there, which is what Wong said, because all of them agreed to be filmed, but everybody's camera conscious, so they would try to act out the best ideals that they thought should be in a decent and elegant way of a resolution for that case. But everybody's reason for participation and resolution comes in such different ways. Like there will be a case that didn't make it to the final cut, but the husband Wong was able to get the wife, the mistress, and the husband and herself into a villa by the ocean to spend the weekend together as a resolution to the case. And the husband was, like the second the Mistress Wong took the wife to go grocery shopping, the husband and the mistress started singing karaoke in the living room, and the husband was trying to kiss the mistress in front of the camera. That was just like totally unbelievable. What was he thinking? We couldn't get it. So it's really hard to try to understand everybody's incentive or reasons behind their actions.
Yeah. Me?
Yes.
What an incredible film! Like it's hard. I'm in awe that it exists. It's incredible.
Thank you.
And one of the things I'm getting out of it is, yes, she's not trained, and yes, she's so ethical and she's so brilliant at it. And but I feel like that's true about the filmmakers as well. Like it's to be this ethical is not just like something I could do. You know, it takes like
Everybody brings
I mean, it's like we might want to not extract and exploit, but how do you actually do it? And so I was just wondering, where do you learn how to do that? And what are your influences? Like, what are your other? Is it through other projects and experience, or is it from other filmmakers and the mistakes they've made? Like, how did you even know how to approach this?
Right. I can't speak for Liz, but for me, this is my second feature documentary, actually. And I've been very lucky. My very first feature documentary, it's called Ascension. I worked with Jessica Kingdon, a Chinese-American director, and we were Oscar nominated in 2022. So I've been very lucky to be able to work with such talented and ethical female Chinese-American directors for my first two features. And the Jessica style is also so respectful and caring and observational, which I think everybody says they're under the influence of Frederick Weissman a little bit, because it's very respectfully observational. And through working, because Ascension took 4 years, this took 4 years, that's like 8 years of my life. And really it's being on set and having daily interactions with them and observing how they do things. It really changed how I perceive the documentary industry in general, as I know there are millions of other practices or styles out there, but I think it's also random luck that also we got along because we had certain alignment in how things should be done on film set, because I've worked on commercial film sets. Trust me, I don't want to do it again, because it's not about respect at all. It's about getting the things done, and you're a tool, and it's not about respecting the subjects either. I'm generalizing a little bit, but from my personal experiences. So I would say 8 years of my life working with such wonderful directors, and also trying to become a director myself. And I'm going to persist in that direction of sticking to the value of authenticity, respect, and whatever filmmaker ethics that were already, for me, true as a person.
Somebody has. Let's go here.
Hi, I want to echo everyone's comments that this was such an amazing film. And following up on this gentleman's question, I was very curious about, the afterlife of these characters. Do you know? I mean, you've given us some hints that the husband still wanted to kiss the Fei.
Oh, that's another case.
Oh, there's another case.
That didn't make it to the final.
Oh, okay. So do you know what's happened to the husband and wife, and do you know what's happened to Fei?
After watching, the last time we saw them is really sitting down and watching the final cut with every single one of them. So we don't really know what's the most recent updates about their case or their relationship. but I trust Wang's professionalism actually, and she would just actually, I mean, because the fundamental problems in the marriage in each of these cases often come way deeper than just the appearance of another person. It could be about sex, it could be about, problems that originated from their own family. Like, because in this case, the wife's, they keep talking about the span of a half year. It's because half a year ago, the wife's mom died, and that really changed her temperament a lot. She couldn't leave that, so she became angry more often, or like, that's why the husband said, well, I just felt like I needed an outlet because her temperament changed so much and all that. So Wang would actually go in and be the therapist in that case and fix the fundamental problems, as long as the clients allow her to.
So we don't know what's happened to them.
In this case, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All in the corner.
Curious, the couple's daughter, what was her response to like the filmmaking process of the final film?
She's smart because she told her mom to ask us. They basically wrote a whole paper of sentences asking me and Liz to read in front of their camera, their iPhone. Nothing that this film or this film crew does would jeopardize the good image of China or violate any Chinese laws by any regard. We were being filmed by them. But she knows the existence of the whole filming process, but you can see she didn't appear much. Well, she wasn't really involved in the case per se, but she appeared in the final dinner scene. So she knew about it. She didn't want to participate in it too much, and eventually she was okay with the final reunion dinner scene. Yeah.
Generally speaking, did you get an idea of how pervasive the mistress problem is over there, and what is or will be the government's attitude about this film?
So you're asking me how high the cheating rate is in China, and that's an interesting question, and that's actually the question that I tend to ask different audiences in different countries and cities that I go to. I was in Egypt for a film festival by the Red Sea, and the audience told me, I totally think the profession would flourish here because I think the cheating rate is about 200%. That's from locals, and literally that's what they said. So I think it's hard and wrong to generalize, but I think it's pretty universal and prevalent everywhere, but each society or individual's attitude or solutions to it will be so different. For example, I believe like if this situation happens in the US or in Europe, women will probably decide to take more initiatives in tackling the problems themselves or not even giving a chance. Like cheating is the line to draw. So I would say it's particularly in an Asian or Chinese society that women, because ultimately both the wife and husband's final goal by a large percentage is to save the marriage and really not go into this whole social identity collapse, which would happen more likely in Asian society than in Europe, for example. Actually, a French girl just told me recently that she thinks after watching the film that a guy leaving a family for a mistress is considered not a big deal in France. No, like more and more not a big deal in France anymore. So that actually, I think, plays a very important role to how each case ends.
And what about the government's attitude?
Oh, I don't know. I hope I'm still living in China, so I hope it's mixed bags. For example, for Ascension, they didn't say much per se, but they also didn't even allow the streaming of the Oscar that year in China because they thought Oscar's getting just way too political. And there's no coverage of Ascension, although it's a documentary about China that's Oscar nominated. So there's no media reports, there's no nothing. I did a few private screenings at universities and other organizations, but there's no theatrical release by any chance. So I really don't know how the outcome's gonna be for this one.
Generally speaking, did you get an idea of how pervasive the mistress problem is over there, and what is or will be the government's attitude about this film?
So you're asking me how high the cheating rate is in China, and that's an interesting question, and that's actually the question that I tend to ask different audiences in different countries and cities that I go to. I was in Egypt for a film festival by the Red Sea, and the audience told me, I totally think the profession would flourish here because I think the cheating rate is about 200%. That's from locals, and literally that's what they said. So I think it's hard and wrong to generalize, but I think it's pretty universal and prevalent everywhere, but each society or individual's attitude or solutions to it will be so different. For example, I believe like if this situation happens in the US or in Europe, women will probably decide to take more initiatives in tackling the problems themselves or not even giving a chance. Like cheating is the line to draw. So I would say it's particularly in an Asian or Chinese society that women, because ultimately both the wife and husband's final goal by a large percentage is to save the marriage and really not go into this whole social identity collapse, which would happen more likely in Asian society than in Europe, for example. Actually, a French girl just told me recently that she thinks after watching the film that a guy leaving a family for a mistress is considered not a big deal in France. No, like more and more not a big deal in France anymore. So that actually, I think, plays a very important role to how each case ends.
And what about the government's attitude?
Oh, I don't know. I hope I'm still living in China, so I hope it's mixed bags. For example, for Ascension, they didn't say much per se, but they also didn't even allow the streaming of the Oscar that year in China because they thought Oscar's getting just way too political. And there's no coverage of Ascension, although it's a documentary about China that's Oscar nominated. So there's no media reports, there's no nothing. I did a few private screenings at universities and other organizations, but there's no theatrical release by any chance. So I really don't know how the outcome's going to be for this one.
Sure.
As a fellow documentarian, locally, I really applaud your masterful work. And I think it's really amazing how you're able to do it as a team with the protagonists. My question is, one about the film specifically. You were saying that the mistress initially thought she could win the husband, and that's why she signed the case. But then after seeing the final cut and she wasn't able to prevail, I wonder what her motivation would be to agree still, to have the whole film shot as is to keep the kids outside of China. And then a bigger question I have is after filming and finishing the film, what's your view of the big picture in China in this phenomenon, in this specific time period in China's history, this line of work, do anything you think to make people change, all the people involved, the three parties involved, like what kind of impact it has sort of at a society and personal level?
The impact that this film potentially has?
Yes,
Oh,
on
okay.
their life and how they change their relationship, let's say in marriage, or like for the mistress, how they could maybe learn from it in their life and to perhaps find happiness elsewhere.
Right. For the mistress, I think this film being really aesthetically beautiful helps. It's a document of a period of her lifetime. And as you can tell from one of the conversations in the film, the scene when she kicked Wang out of the tea house and wanted a private moment with the husband, she already sort of said a little bit about how I know you sort of previously might have come with an agenda, but I don't care what it is, but I actually felt sincere care and help throughout the process. And in no period of time were you trying to hurt me or do things that were really mean to me in any way. You were trying to help me. That's literally what she said on camera. And so in the end, I think both the wife and, which is why we're very proud that it's a film about 3 women. The guy caused the problem, but was not the solution of the problem. It's really the triangle of 3 women and women helping and understanding women. And our poster, if you can see outside, it's a triangle, a juxtaposition of the wife, mistress, and the mistress dispeller. So in the end, both the wife and mistress did tell us a similar message that they wanted this film to be influential in a positive way for people who are either trapped or dragged into a similar situation to be able to learn some lessons or, have some takeaways from it by how they handled it, by how Wang helped them handle it. So that's what they thought.
We have time for maybe one more question. Yeah, yes.
I remember there was a scene where the husband was having dinner with Miclat, with the mistress. So that scene occurred, like, as we know, like, the husband disappeared for a month after the baptism. But that scene actually appeared before the baptism. So I'm just wondering, when the dinner scene actually happened.
The hot pot scene that the husband, oh God, that's like 4 years ago. It's a very specific question. Honestly, I can't tell for sure what's the sequence of that. And to be honest, Wang was more the director of the sequence of each step that she carefully orchestrated. So I really can't remember the sequence of that.
So it wasn't fake, right?
It wasn't faked. I mean, because a lot of times, even when you're just seeing 5 seconds of the footage, we were filming the whole thing. But so in the end, we had over 500 hours of footage that was cut down to this 1 hour and a half. So we were just constantly there, fly on the wall, and picking the good part that we thought would make a really fluent and empathetic story. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Maggie, for answering all the questions. And we'll see you guys in the screenings here at the festival.